Our guest today is Joe Binley, and he is the founder and CEO of Project A.D. Joe Binley is an eminent name in sports nutrition. He's responsible for pioneering innumerable groundbreaking formulas, including Shredabull Untamed, Stampede Untamed, the brand new A.D. Life products, and Professor Nutz. And this is the very first peanut butter that actually helps your metabolism work better. So hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about that today too. He's a renowned expert on the ketogenic diet and contest prep for some of the industry's most famous bodybuilders. Joe has been committed to developing the world's best sports nutrition brand. Welcome to the show, Joe Binley.
Well, that's quite an introduction to live up to. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you on. And, you know, nobody starts in this field without being passionate about bodybuilding. What got you started into bodybuilding?
Honestly, I think I started lifting when I was 15, 16, and I was always an overweight kid. I was very active in sports. I played every sport going, but I always struggled with my weight. And when I got into lifting, I kind of got, the training was the training. The training's the training. You know, you go in there to lift heavy. I grew up on a farm, so you see an object, you lift it. So the weight was, that was just by the by. But the thing that really, really got my attention was the nutrition and the supplementation side. I mean, I really delved deep into that and became a nerd very quickly. You know what it's like. You get your head stuck into every book. There wasn't a great deal on the internet then. It was more reliant on forums, but it was really the supplements. At the age of 16, I was importing supplements from the USA because the UK, where I grew up, was just so far behind. I mean, we had protein and some creatine, and that was about it, you know. So I carried on training with bodybuilding, and it actually just never left me. I went all the way through university and carried on going, like self-education with nutrition. While I was in university, I actually formulated a bunch of products and was ready to start my own company at the age of 21. Which I delayed for a little while, but we'll probably come on to that. But bodybuilding's been a part of me since I was 16, and I think it was, everyone has body image issues at some point in their life, and when you struggle with weight or something like that, and it's a problem, there's only one way to solve it, and that's to get a firm grasp on an understanding of how to work around the situation.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, you know, you are self-taught. That's one of the driving forces in the beginning, you know, importing stuff. I'm sure you imported maybe some of the old Weider supplements or Universal. What did you get?
Actually, yeah. Do you know what? The first thing I actually got, I think, was the Isatori Metacell. I think I was 17 at the time. And I followed the training program. I just remember getting insane pumps, and essentially it was just some creatine and some carbohydrate. But hey, well, I didn't really know any better then, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, back in the old days, EAS, the Phosphagen HP, and the Metrec shakes and things like that. Yeah, just the old classics that everyone used to live by.
No Cybergenics.
You know, do you know what? I'm one of those fortunate people who never got sideswiped by Cybergenics.
Oh man.
Gosh.
We did a podcast a while ago with Eric Hillman, and we were talking about that, the whole Cybergenics, how that came into being, and their marketing program. And so just this idea of, you know, importing supplements and starting from scratch and seeing what works and doesn't work. Can you share with us how that kind of became the journey of how Project A.D. came about? How did you start the brand, and what was the journey behind that?
So I went through university, and my degree was actually in purchasing and supply chain management. And so that's obviously the front end of business, negotiation, sourcing of raw materials, and then following all that process through to get into the end stage, which is the retailer. During that 4-year degree, I had a year in industry where I worked for Disney, a UK company that has a license for Disney. And that involved me working with the Chinese. Everything was imported from China. So whilst I was doing that, it was a very high stress job. And I learned so much. That was probably the best thing I ever did, to be honest, because I started off as a junior position, which was essentially, Joe, go and use a photocopier and make us some cups of tea. You know, that was it. And then by the time I'd finished that, actually within 8 months, I'd taken the person who trained me, I'd taken their job and become a senior buyer. So my salary went from like a university student on 10 or 11,000 per year, pro-rated up to 75,000 a year as a student, which was pretty much unheard of. And I had to do all the negotiations then with the owner of the company, which they weren't quite expecting, you know, but that taught me a lot. So whilst I was doing that, I'd made all the contacts in China and I was actively making and preparing my own brand of supplements. I actually had 6 formulas, all the raw materials sourced, and started to work on the packaging. And when I left university, my degree was always just going to be something that I would fall back on if I ever failed in my own business. But it was just a chance meeting, and this is something that I tell everyone: if you don't put yourself out there, you never get to meet people. You won't do anything sat in your own front room. I was training at a gym back home, and little did I know that the owner of the gym, his son, was a former junior Mr. Universe, and he was like 6'1", 6'2", with blonde hair. And his father, who owned the gym, was just like, "You are the spitting image of my son. I need to introduce you." So he was like, okay. So one day he just happened to be, he wasn't actually in, he was in the back room, and I was talking to the owner of the gym, his father, about what I was doing in China. And he heard from the back room and came out, and he was like, very interested. He was like, "What's this about China? What are you doing?" So we just hit it off immediately, and he was like, I mean, I think that was my 3rd year of university, so I had 18 months left. We just got on like a house on fire, and he owned his own supplement company. He was the biggest distributor of supplements online at that time. So essentially the bodybuilding.com of the UK, he was it. And he just launched his own personal brand of supplements as well. So I was consulting for them in my final year of university. I was actually doing tooling agreements and importing packaging and materials from China on behalf of them and charging them a consultancy fee whilst I was in my final year of university. And that was my opening into the industry. As soon as I finished, I did my exam, my final exam in university on the Wednesday night. And I was in Wales for university, so it's about a 7-hour drive. As soon as I got out of that exam room, I packed my car, drove 7 hours, and the next day I turned up at 9 o'clock in the office, and I was ready to start work. And that was pretty much it, you know. And from there, he knew that I always wanted to launch my own brand. I think I only stayed there for about 10 months, and I had got enough experience, and I'd helped them to the point where I got them through some sticky situations like warehouse moving and a lot of high stress things. And the Olympia came around, 2009 Olympia, and I had all my ducks in a row. I was flying out to meet my manufacturer, and it didn't want to give me holidays. So it came to a crunch point where I chose to leave 2 days before the Olympia on good terms, and flew to the Olympia, met my manufacturer September 2009, and the rest is history. I started with about $2,000, $2,500 to my name. And ever since that day, in 2009, everything's just been rolled back into the company to make it what it is today.
And that's why it's successful. You just continue to pour back in and pour back in. I bet you, what did some of your friends think that you were pulling down $75K as a student? That probably had to have been quite a thing. You had to have been the man. I mean, I was dirt poor when I was a student. I was dirt poor after I was a student, actually, for a while. But, that's just amazing that you had that, leadership role at such a young age. I mean, that just shows some of the traits that you have developed, for sure.
Well, they actually did a test in the company. They tested everyone's, it was psychological test, basically. So they tested everyone. And I used to sit directly opposite, on the same table as the managing director, who everyone was scared of. So why they put me there, I have no clue. Because no one else would sit there, basically. Everyone was just, excuse my language, they were just shit scared of him. So I was there, and then they put everyone through this psychological testing. It was like a a whole week of like classes and that, psychological analysis, loads of questions to be answered, and scenario role playing. And it came to the end of it, and it was like a big banquet dinner, and they read the results out, and I think red was like the most direct, blunt, and authoritarian color, and you could rank from like 0 to 100 on that. And they were like working the way through the numbers, and the guy was called Steve Miles. I think he came out like 92, which was just like a country mile above anybody else. I think like everyone else was maybe in like the 60s. And then they read my name out, and I came out at 96, and everyone was just like, "Oh shit." So yeah, I don't know. I was born with that, I guess. You know, it's something that I've always been a little bit different, and I used to try and conform and quash that. But the more I embraced it, the more success I seem to get, and I've always done things my own way, which is definitely against the grain. Like the way I've built my business is completely different to how anyone else will build business. You know, even coming out here into the US and building the line from 2016, I didn't do the selling online with discounts. I didn't do the sample packets. I did none of that. It was all about boots on the ground, face to face, look in someone's eyes, educate them on the quality of the product. The biggest strength of the brand and me in general is people. You provide a good service or you provide a good product, people will always come back and they will trust you. And we've had the same customers that started with us in day one, like 10, 11 years ago, still buying the products now. So the total acquisition cost of a customer is very low because we keep them, whereas other companies will always have to pump marketing to get new customers. We just compounded year upon year. And I knew that it was a very safe strategy, but I couldn't do it any other way because I had no investment. So I was always cognizant of timeframes involved to build the brand. And I told anyone who joined me, I'm like, look, you're joining now, don't expect immediate success. It's going to take 3 years to get to a position. And I'm still doing that today with Professor Nutz. You know, that was 3 years in development, and I'm still going to say now it's still going to be another 2 years before it really starts to get tracking. You know, I think people just lose sight of what it actually takes to build a brand and have something with longevity and success built into it, as opposed to a quick win that people will like be attached to for 12 to 18 months, and then the company's dead, which we see all too often now.
Yeah, and it's people have bought into you as a person as well as the brand, and I think that's the thing is, you know, you're selling yourself as well as the brand. You know, you put your heart and soul, everything into that, and I think that's why it's become so successful. And one of the things I want to talk about is this whole idea. We live in this age with a lot of supplement companies having what I call proprietary blends. You don't really know what's in it. One of the things that's great about Project A.D. is you can read exactly what's in it. You know that it's got the efficacious amount of nutrients in there that are needed to be in there. Can you tell us the process of formulating a product? Like when you begin from square one, okay, so here's how we're going to formulate this product. What does that process look like?
I don't really go about it as I'm going to formulate X product. I look at a problem or a situation that an athlete may be having, and then it's like, what is the best way to cure this problem? Which has always led me to differentiating within a category or creating a new product category in itself. And there's many different ways depending on how complex the formulation can get as to how many iterations it's going to take to nail it. You mentioned proprietary blends there. We actually use a couple of proprietary blends in some of our products. And I'm quite staunch about that, and I'll stand by them because I'll take Shredabull, for example, has a proprietary blend. Now, we've got about 26, 27 products, and maybe 3 or 4 of them have got proprietary blends. Everything else is full transparency. So you know we're not cutting corners. We aren't going to do it for 2 or 3 products. But Shredabull, which is so ridiculously strong, that took me 11 months of personal testing because I formulate and I test everything on myself. And anyone who's used that product will know how ridiculously strong it is. So I went through hell making that product, you know. So I'm not going to put 11 months of my work, like testing on my own body, as a full disclosure out there to everybody for someone to pick it off the shelf and copy. we've had it so many times. So something like that, I will put a little bit of protection in there for as long as possible. But I'll just say, look, if you question a blend there, just look at the rest of our range, which is full transparency, and look at the reviews, So the process of going through it is, I'll try and identify a problem. I'll take Mass Chaser, for example, which is our weight gainer. I mean, that's a generic product. Like, a lot of companies will have a weight gainer, but I look at a problem. So why do people generally require a weight gainer? It's because they struggle eating. So they don't have the appetite and they can't get the calories in. So logic would tell you that if you make a weight gainer with 1,000 calories in, and it's taking up like a liter of fluid to mix that thing up, you're just going to have the same struggle in putting that down. So like our mass gainer, the inspiration actually came from being around my mother and treating my mother through cancer. Because I don't know if anyone's been almost everyone's touched by the cancer, but if you've been around someone after their chemotherapy, they just don't want to eat, they have no appetite. So you have to find ways of just getting some calories in there. So calorie dense foods and hacking the diet, just like a couple of mouthfuls to get enough calories in to maintain bodily functions while they get over the chemotherapy. So like with our mass gainer, I think it's like you get 500 calories in just 4 ounces of water, which is essentially like 3 or 4 mouthfuls. Now, that just circumnavigates any problem that an athlete may have, or that just a general member of the population might have for getting calories into the body. It's not something that I'm a huge fan of, because I'm a nutrition nerd, micronutrient density and putting the right foods in at the right times, but it's a means to an end for some people. So that's just like one example of where I didn't think we're going to release a mass gainer. It's like, well, I'm seeing this problem come up over and over again, and no one's still found a viable solution for it. So let me just tackle this problem in my own way.
I like that. And, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a big difference between using proprietary blend to protect yourself and using a proprietary blend to cut corners on, the good stuff. And that's what I like, is that you guys are just flat out, you've been transparent on so much stuff. You know what works. And I think that's the biggest thing I see from Project A.D. is the testimonials. I mean, you guys have quite a rabid following of people, they use it, it works, they come back.
Yeah, we've got that, and honestly, I think it's the strength of the people that surround themselves with the brand. Even the ones who are signed and attributed to the brand, we've got the best Olympians and the best coaches using our stuff. We don't talk about it because we're maybe associated with other companies, but we have that trust and respect whereby which they can use our products and it doesn't get divulged elsewhere. But the people we actually have on our roster, we've got some of the best coaches in the industry, in like the fitness industry and in strength industry with Nathan Payton. So I think people just look by proxy at who's associated with the brand, and the athletes and everyone who was around me, and like my closer circle and the people associated with the brand, they're all very honest, very straightforward, blue collar type workers who are there to, serve people. It's nothing's about making dollars, and it never has been with me. If you do something you're passionate about and you provide a good product or a good service, then that will just take care of itself. You'll never need to give it any consideration.
Yeah, and this is one really cool thing. So you have gathered together this elite group of people, from Nathan Payton with the nutrition side to some of the best elite athletes in the world. What are some of the leadership challenges in working with a team like that? I mean, you're the leader of this team. Are there any challenges that come along with that?
You know what? I'm very lucky because from the get-go, I always ask my staff or the athletes, pretty much, I live by 3 rules. It's like, don't lie to me, don't steal from me. And if you've got a problem, always speak to me. And everyone just trusts me because I've got 11 years of building from scratch. So I kind of know that if I ask them to trust me, they'll get there. And everyone who's trusted me is being paid back double. So honestly, everyone's really easy to work with. It took a couple of the guys over here, especially some of my sales staff, and they still do. Some getting used to the way that I do things because it's very different. It's like, well, why can't we do this deal? Why can't we give this away? I'm like, because the numbers don't work. Do you want to keep your job? Do you want to stay in business? Just because someone's doing something dumb Doesn't mean we need to copy. If everyone's jumping off the edge of a cliff, I'm probably just going to stand and watch and not follow them.
Yep.
But I mean, when it comes back to, you asked about leadership, I think you just lead by example. I'm very transparent with everything that I do, and I'm very blunt and I'm very honest. Sometimes people work like that, but they know it comes from a good place. And they know that I've got a long-term vision for the brand, but I also have a long-term vision for each and every single individual that's with me. So it's like, I don't know, we've got two of the bikini girls with us, like Ashlyn, who just placed third at the Tampa Pro, and Beatrice, for example. I think she will be a Miss Olympia. I truly believe that she will win the Olympia in like the next 5 years, or she'll be right there knocking on the door. The first thing I did with those girls was, okay, you've got great energy, you're very charismatic, I want you to do a podcast. So I think they're about 10, 12 episodes into a female podcast, and it's just growing in popularity. And that's not about promoting the products, it's about building their personal brand. And the brand's always the subliminal part in the background. The athlete or the coach is always the star. It's just that you're consistently there, and then it works for everybody. I'm invested in building everyone around me as much as I am about building the brand, because if they grow, the brand grows, and it's all subliminal. We actually, believe it or not, we actually limit the amount of posts that our athletes are allowed to post, because I don't want their audience to disengage thinking that they're selling with a discount code or it's a pushing product. When they do a post, I want it to be informative and be looked at and respected, not just passed by because they're trying to sell something.
And that's just, it flies counterculture to what's going on today. I think that's what makes this such a successful, not only a brand, but such a successful story and model. And talking about success, can you share with us like some of your favorite, products? Because there's a vast array of products that Project A.D. has, but you've really poured your heart and soul into a few that are just, I feel like you're probably passionate about. Can you share some of your favorite products?
I think, there's a couple. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say like the original Shredabull and the Shredabull 2.0. Honestly, they built the brand out here because they were such strong products, and everyone over here needs a feel product. You're going to sell or introduce people to a brand by one of two things. It's going to be taste or it's going to be feel. Mm-hmm. And because we don't do a protein or anything like that tastes like Kool-Aid, like our aminos are very high end. You can't make that taste amazing because it's got too many actives in there. So we'll have to go down the feel route. And to be honest, that, as I said before, it took 11 months of testing on myself, and that a lot of myself went into that product. So I think that one's probably like the standout where I can say, you know what, we did a pretty good job there. But on a health point of view, a product that's actually 8.5 years old is Matador. And I love that product so much because we've had type 1, type 2 diabetics using it, as well as pre-diabetics and athletes, obviously. But it moves the needle health-wise, and that's something that I'm more passionate about than anything. Like any company can go and make a pre-workout. Anyone can make a fat burner, make a stimulant. It's gonna give you a good workout. Well, wonderful. A lot of things can, but when you can move the needle to health and performance long term, or allow someone to perform at a high level without their body breaking down and crashing, or add years to their career of competing, then that's where the golden ticket is for me. That's where I'm really passionate. Where my passion really lies, and that's really why the AD Lifeline was built out so aggressively, because I was getting sent so many people's blood work and consulting on like repairing people that I was like, man, I just need my raw materials that I can trust at my disposal, and the same for my coaches, because any coach who's associated with me takes care of blood work. So we don't have any coaches who don't read and don't like undo problems with athletes' blood work. Mm-hmm. So I think we just needed the tools at the disposal. And something like formulating some of the health products is pretty simple because you know what the efficacious doses are, But we will try and add some complementary materials to even singular products just to enhance either the bioavailability or to activate another pathway which will, increase the efficacious use of that product.
Yeah, what I love about this is I'm a big Walt Disney fan. He's one of my heroes. And one of the things he used to always talk about is we're going to plus something. So if we have it, we're going to take it to another level. And that's what I feel like when I look at the labels on Project AD. It's like, hey, not only are all the bases covered, but here we're going to plus it. We're going to take it to another level. And that's just something you just don't see. People wanting to go the extra mile. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about, to people, we talked about Matador, to listeners who may not understand this. Why is it glucose disposal so important, not just to athletes, but to anybody out there? Why is this such an important combination to have glucose disposal?
Well, if you're not so basically, for anyone who doesn't know the products, obviously not many will potentially on this podcast. Matador is, as John said, a glucose disposal agent. So what that means is if you take it with a meal that contains carbohydrate, it's going to quickly regulate your blood glucose levels and encourage it to be stored intramuscular as opposed to in adipose tissue. Now, if you have high blood glucose levels or you're insulin resistant, that's going to cause your body to release more insulin, and higher exposure to insulin is going to mediate higher inflammatory responses. And over time, that's going to cause a lot of issues with organs and things like your eyes and other parts of the body. I mean, chronic inflammation is the driver of all disease states, pretty much. I don't want to be completely, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I've lost the word, but you know what I mean. I don't want to be totally.
Yeah, you're making.
I mean, high inflammatory states is pretty much related to all of the disease states. So if you can mediate glucose sensitivity and mediate inflammation, then chances are you're going to have a lot better chance of staying healthy for longer. Plus, there's body composition benefits to it for those of us who actually care about body composition, which I guess is most of us. You know?
I mean, it's such a great that's the one thing I was telling you, like, if you could, take one thing that would legit make a difference tomorrow, like you would know it, you're going to feel different. Glucose dispersal agent is just a powerful, powerful thing, because people have tried, different pre-workouts, they've tried different things, but this is one that can just radically not just help you work out better. This is going to radically change your life and your health. And speaking of health, we live in the age of keto, and keto is kind of a general strategy that so many people, talk about or use. Can we take a few minutes and take a dive into keto? Because I would like you to share maybe the diversity of the finer aspects of keto, because, you hear so many generalizations. People say, well, I'm doing keto this or I'm doing keto that. But I think that a lot of people don't understand that you can take keto and you can tailor it to meet anybody's needs by the kinds of fats, all those different things. Can you dive into that and share a little bit about the diversity involved in ketogenic dieting?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I've spent years on that. And even with athletes going all the way back to like 2012, so 8-9 years personally and 8 years definitely with athletes. But just touching on Matador, and it ties into keto a little bit, even though it's a carbohydrate product. I mean, if you are doing keto with carbohydrates, like cyclically or targeted, then taking Matador with that will quickly regulate your blood glucose and get you back into ketosis. One of the key points which I didn't mention was if your blood glucose is elevated for a long period of time, then you cannot release adipose tissue, so you can't burn body fat. It switches that off. So, which is why one of the huge benefits to ketogenic diet is you always have constant, stable, and low blood glucose levels if it's done correctly. Keto, you can go down so many different rabbit holes. There's so many different approaches, from the high protein version, which, it's more athlete driven and not correct. I don't really think that you need to go super high on protein. People are just very much afraid to eat the adequate amount of fat required, to the medical keto, which I actually don't think provides enough protein to meet recovery goals if you're a training athlete. I've done carnivore, I've done raw carnivore, I've done cyclical, targeted, every type of keto. And just as we probably understand that a carbohydrate is not a carbohydrate and a protein is not a protein, they all have different effects, but no one seems to look at in detail at fats They just all get lumped into one group, and it's like you can cause so much damage with the wrong types of fat that it's unreal. Like, you'll see people doing keto and they'll go out and they'll eat, like, I don't know, processed cheese and burgers and things. I'm like, you've got fats in there which are actually very damaging to the cells. You know, they're going to drive inflammation. They're not going to be beneficial. You know, you get some of the plant oils which are very sensitive and become oxidized. You're going to do, well, more damage. In my opinion, you do more damage to the cells than you will from having sugar, because chances are you can burn sugar off. If it's in a low-fat environment, it will eventually get used, whereas these fats actually get stored in the fat cells and start to become disruptive and drive up inflammation. I mean, we are designed to have certain polyunsaturated fats in our system, but we will store them if we eat in excess of them. You know, it's like ruminant animals, cattle, and things like that. They consume different fats. They always store their excess energy as saturated fats, and most of our cells are made up of saturated fats, which people, it's just, I don't know, man. You know, saturated fat was so demonized. I just don't think they looked at the structure of the body and realized that we can manufacture saturated fat. You know, you eat an excess of glucose, like most of that glucose that's converted to triglycerides, it's going to end up as like palmitic acid, which is saturated fat and stored in the cells. You know, so I don't know. I still scratch my head at a lot of the things that people have been doing for the last 20 years when you actually break it down and look at the physiology of the body and the fuel substrates we've been putting in. I don't know really how in depth you want to go on ketos, the different approaches. I'll let you drive that with the questions.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. I know you've been experimenting with some duck fat. Can you share like what that's about? I mean, that's what I love about you, because I think, Joe, I like that you're always on the cutting edge. And what are some of the things that you've kind of been experimenting with diet?
So I'll give a lot away here, Ben. So back in 2013 in the UK, I was prepping a lot of athletes, and I had most of the top athletes, and I wasn't like pushing to be a prep coach, but they were all interested in what I was doing with people because I was using low carbs and fats. So typically I would cycle through proteins and fats during the week and get quite pronounced effects. So for example, if I give you a regular setup, like Monday, Tuesday would say be a moderate protein day, which might be like 1 gram per pound of body weight or just slightly over. And the fats would probably about match that. But the types of fats would be from more monounsaturated and high omega-3s. So I'm trying to moderate inflammation there because people are dieting in this high stress environment. So you get some like avocado. I was a big believer of olive oil. I like walnuts and lots of salmon. I'm sure you've seen the salmon and peanut butter, which I give to everybody. That's like one of my favorite dishes. But what people didn't realize, my athletes didn't realize this, because I would ask them to make up every morning they would mix up a custom blend of fats. So I would give them an amount of olive oil, an amount of omega-3s. I would give them an amount of GLA and a couple of other things in there. I'd tell them to pour it all into a pot in the morning and add 1 or 2 spoonfuls of nut butter, and that would be the sauce that they would dribble on. So that was on their meals. So it was like they were getting a dressing, but their whole day would be balanced. Their omega-3 to omega-6 ratio would be 1-to-1. They never knew that. So it was quite anal with the food choices, and like that was their setup. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday would generally be the same. But on Wednesday, halfway through the week, I would really ramp up the fat, pull down the protein, but I would go super high in saturated fat. And what I noticed with everybody was they would wake up harder, drier, and they would get excessive amounts of heat they would be giving off. So I really dialed that in. So that's where I coined the fat loading. The phrase fat loading, that became a thing. Like everyone wants to know why I was using butter, why I was using egg yolks, cream, and high saturated fat. Because they just get all these athletes posting the pictures and like, oh, you actually dieting? That's not fish and broccoli. You know, it was quite extreme at that time, and that kind of gave me that reputation in the UK, which saw me write for Flex magazine in quite some depth on the ketogenic diet. But recently, over here, there's only one guy who's kind of been on the same page. He's my go-to guy. I've known him for like 3 years. I mentioned him already, and it's Nathan Payton. Like, we connected I don't even know how we got talking. I think he was just like very kind and complimented me on some of the information I was putting out. And we started a relationship, and we were just doing so much of the. I would send him some diets and some notes, and he would laugh. He'd like, I've been doing that. No one else is. I was like, exactly. So we just hit it off. So I don't know. It's okay to find somebody who is book smart and can talk like from the world of academia, but to find someone who's applying it to athletes and producing results to the level that I was, and definitely Nathan, who's a level above, because he's got 4 or 5 world's strongest man titles under his belt. You know, that's a whole different level. So we were doing some stuff together, and we were playing with different fat sources. And I was eating, we had duck fat in there, and I was doing a lot of chicken skin and duck fat. And for anyone referencing, chicken skin is not a great source, by the way. It's actually pro-inflammatory because unless it's pasture raised, but the regular chicken over here, the fatty chicken, is probably not the best source of fat. Just to note that in case anyone after this podcast goes diving for the chicken thighs and the chicken skins. But I was doing that with Nathan, and I would be like, 20 minutes after eating, I would be dripping with sweat, like absolutely dripping. So we were like going backwards and forwards, and it was just constantly happening. So obviously Nathan had used duck fat before, and he was seeing more and more metabolic responses. And then he started using it with Matador and doing blood glucose tests with like 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrate, a couple of spoonfuls of duck fat, and 1 Matador. And his blood glucose just wasn't shifting. I mean, there was no elevation, there was no peak, there was nothing. It was just stable. So I think it was causing some like really strong metabolic changes within the body in that like 30 to 2 hours postprandial period of consuming that meal. And he's been using it with athletes and rolling with it. But I went a step further with experimentation and started playing with stearic acid. So if anyone doesn't know what stearic acid is, it is a saturated fat, but it's an 18 carbon length fatty acid. It's not too commonly found in foods. You'll get anything that's got like meats has probably got a small percentage of stearic acid. Butter has about, I think it's like 20% in, which is one of the highest yielding, and cacao is about 30%. They're pretty much your 2 highest sources. But I came across some studies that showed it had the potential to cause temporary insulin resistance in adipose cells. So I was like, okay, it stops energy from traveling into adipose cells. So I was like, this intrigued me, because there were some studies done on mice where they would feed a surplus, and not only did they lose adipose, but they lost visceral fat. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play with this. So I bought a bunch of stearic acid powder, and I was melting it down in the microwave, and it tastes like candle wax. If anyone's wondering, it's essentially eating candle wax. It's disgusting. So I was finding ways of getting it into my diet, because I wanted to try and make like 45 to 50% of my fat intake come from this stearic acid. And I'm going to be honest, my strength was ridiculous on that. It was like taking some non-over-the-counter supplementation. It was quite pronounced when I was in a surplus, and I didn't seem to accrue body fat that quickly either. So there's definitely something to it, and I'd like to go back and revisit it at some point in the future, for sure. But it's just an example of, we really don't know a great deal about nutrition. There's not many people delving deep into what some of these things actually do once they're in the body in different amounts, you know. When you look at athletes and look what we do, we look to create environments that are super physiological, and no one's looked at really pulling apart things like fat sources, and we obviously have with plants because we create supplements from them. I just think there's a lot more we can do with basic nutrition to get rapidly increased performance benefits, and it's just untapped at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that, especially, we talk about the ketogenic diet, is that there's so many ways to tweak that with just what you're talking about and the different types of fats. Not all, a fat is not a fat. I think the more people get educated, the better off they're going to be. And I love that you're sharing this kind of cutting edge. I think that you've piqued the interest of quite a few people. I know people are going to be out looking like, where can I get some duck fat? They're going to be trying to look that up.
Well, the thing is as well, like if you're an athlete doing the ketogenic diet, you don't have to be devoid of carbohydrate. I mean, you'll know you're an athlete yourself. If you've got high demands for glycolytic activity, you're going to need some glucose. I mean, I actually think that a lot of my health problems came from being too rigid and not having any carbohydrates for like 3 years and continuing to push myself in bodybuilding training, which is high weight and high volume, and taxing my adrenals to support that work output. So I actually think that some carbs are beneficial if you're going to push your training to the absolute extreme. But that would again change the type of keto or the type of fat sources you will be using on a training day. So when I would do this with people, I would try and use more MCTs leading up and around the training time, so there wasn't long-chain fatty acids circulating in the bloodstream when carbohydrates were going in there. So you weren't driving triglycerides intracellular. Once you were done with the carbohydrates, take something like Matador or even some exogenous insulin. I was working with an assisted athlete, which I've done lots of times, and that will clear blood glucose in 45 minutes, and then you can switch back to the long-chain fatty acids, and that will be either to drive some inflammation, which could be beneficial post-training, because inflammation isn't bad. Too much of inflammation is bad, but people like to think that all inflammation is bad. It's actually very beneficial at certain times, but you need to reset that with anti-inflammatory measures and a reset day or reset periods during the day. So that's just to give you an athlete point of view and how you can manipulate it to support your own performance needs. That's why I just get very agitated by people who prescribe one approach because it's been successful for them. Like, well, you might be going in and doing 5 sets of 5 and that's your workout. It's going to be very different for an athlete who's going in there doing 25, 30 sets for legs, with not much rest between sets. Someone like you who's doing extreme feats of strength and continually taxing your central nervous system, you probably need more reset days to mediate anti-inflammatory pathways than someone who might be forcing to drive them a little bit to get more hypertrophy. So it's very individualistic.
Yeah, and this is just, you're hitting gold right here, especially for me. We push the limit of weights for time, all these different things. And when you get that, when your nervous system is tapped and you know that you're in adrenal fatigue, this is one of the great things I love is that, can you tell us about some of the new AD Life stuff that helps that stress response? I mean, you got the ashwagandha, the hot cocoa is, I can't even say it's so good. It's like, this can't be good for you when you're drinking it. It's that good. Let's talk about that because, again, I think you've piqued enough interest here that people are going to want to be tweaking their diets because, again, one size does not fit all. But let's talk about that for those of us who have pushed the extremes, whether you're a bodybuilder, whether you're in strongman or powerlifting. If you're in that adrenal fatigue and if you're like me, you don't get the sleep that you really need. A lot of times you're burning the candle at both ends, doing too much. Can you talk about some of the cool cutting edge ingredients you have put together for stress relief?
You know what? Just hearing you say that really makes me think that I should be better at looking after myself than I actually am, because I'm an absolute wreck. I rely on stimulants too much and burn the candle at both ends. So, yeah, probably why I needed some of these products. I will talk about the cacao because it's something you've just received. And
so good.
Again, it's a different take on a product, and we've created another category in the supplement industry because no one's quite come out with anything like this before. So what that is, it's a hot chocolate drink. So for any people who are dieting and like the taste of chocolate, or any females out there who just like to drink chocolate, this is a 21-calorie drink, hot chocolate drink, but it's got some calming properties. It's got theanine, chamomile in there, some reishi mushroom, and most people will drink that before bed to get better sleep. And actually, Nathan Payton's done some cool testing with that, where he's been on and off intermittently testing his daughter.
Oh, okay.
Because she tracks her asleep, and pretty much every time that she would take that, so he wouldn't give it to her every night because he wanted to test if it was actually the product doing it. But every time he would give her daughter that, she would get pretty much double the amount of REM sleep that she would with not taking it. So, I mean, that just talks about how efficacious that is in improvements in recovery. But another way of using this product, which I actually like, and this is what I do, is like after I've had a hard training session, I've come home and had my post-workout meal. I will take that pretty much at the same time or just after to activate parasympathetic nervous system and really calm the nervous system and get it ready for food. A lot of times that people have digestive issues or post-workout they can't eat, it's because the body, the central nervous system, is so taxed that the body won't accept food. So when they force feed, it sits in the gut and it can't be digested, and they're going to put another meal on top of that. So you need to kind of work with the body and coerce it into accepting food and getting it into a recovery state before you can actually feed it. And I think that's just a huge area that's completely missed by everybody. You know, if you don't prepare your body for food and get your nervous system prepared for it, you're not going to digest the food. You're going to get either malabsorption or you're going to get distension. So the calories that you're putting down there and the nutrients are not going to be absorbed. You're not going to get the recovery, and you're just going to knock onto your next day's training, which is going to be compromised.
Yeah, I've used it several times post-workout. I try to take it before bed, which is fantastic. But I did a couple workouts where I knew I was going to push to the limit, and it was kind of like this reward, this sweet taste after, and it really did calm me down, because one of the things is I train in the afternoon, and so I'm so amped up after that, it's hard to bring the body back down. It's hard to kick on the parasympathetic. And so, you know, this whole new genre, this is one of the things I think, this whole lifestyle brand, everything from liver health. You know, a lot of people don't realize how important the liver is to everything. Even people that are very concerned with how they look, your liver could be holding you back. I mean, you guys have really dug into every aspect of the fitness and nutrition lifestyle brand. Absolutely.
Yeah, we try and do it as well at different price points. So we've got a really complete product called Liver Plus, which is milk thistle. NAC is a big driver in that, and it's not a bad price point. It's a great complex, and I've used it with people who've been close to liver failure, who've not even been in fitness, they've been consuming too much alcohol or something, and after 3 or 4 weeks, we just see huge drops in liver enzymes. Now, if that's at a price point, and then you've got Tudka, which is probably one of the most renowned products for helping with liver and with bile, but it's at a high price point, so not everyone can afford that. So we always like to give a few different options, so you can use them both if you have a lot of disposable and you want to go to like the nth degree when you're really taxing the body, or we have something at the lower end. I always try and think about the consumer and make it accessible for them, you know, because a lot of companies will, I mean, you can make the best product in the world, but if it's not a price point that your consumer base can absorb, then it's just going to stay sat on a shelf and it's not going to help anybody. Yeah. So I'm always very cognizant of what can a consumer bear, what cost can they bear.
Yeah, and we've had you for a great time today. Just a couple more questions. I could talk about this stuff all day because it just intrigues me, gets me fired up. Can we talk a little bit about microbiome within the body and the importance of fiber? You guys are one of the companies that I've seen that's really, you know, getting people to understand that you can take all the supplements in the world, but if your body can't digest it, if it can't absorb those nutrients, you're really missing out. Can you talk about some of the things you guys have done to help improve people's microbiomes?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to digestion. Actually, at the same time as Matador, about 9 years ago, I released another product called Ravenous, which was a digestive aid, which, I mean, for a supplement company to come out with our leading product. So we started with a test booster, then we had a fat burner, then we had a liver care, and then we had Matador, and we had Ravenous. Like, so within our first 5 products, we've got 2 products that, okay, now you know what they are, but if you go back 8-9 years, no one was talking about the gut microbiome, no one was talking digestion, definitely no one was talking about regulating blood glucose levels. So we're always ahead of the curve and like always putting things out there, and we've not really got recognition for that until pretty much now when we've got a platform for it. But honestly, when it comes to microbiome and things, I don't think that any of us truly know a great deal in it because it is so individualistic. And this is another thing that really, like, I get very frustrated when people will give out a protocol when your microbiome is completely different to mine. So if I'm saying, take this probiotic, take these prebiotics, eat this food, take this fiber, I'm like, your biome might already be jacked completely to one side with a bunch of the bacteria that you're telling someone to take. So without adequate testing, I don't feel anyone should be prescribing like full protocols out there. You know, I don't know. Everyone's pushing probiotics at the moment. I've got a real issue with a lot of things that are going on because we just aren't testing in depth enough, and no one steps back and takes a holistic view of the body. Mm-hmm. You know. And yes, you've got to apply, everything's individualistic. It's like, I always use training as the analogy. So if I came to you and you've not trained for 6 months and I go, okay, John, time to train. We're going to go back to like you at your peak strength and you're going to do the same volume and the same weight. Your body's just going to say, hey, get lost. I can't do this. Yeah. You know, so if something can be a hormetic stress and be beneficial, or where what's hormetic stress to one person could be a complete detrimental stress to another person. So, I mean, I don't push a lot of products. Like, you can probably tell I'm not the best sales guy when it comes to the brand because I'm very open-minded and like this is just one part of a potential solution. You know, if someone's got real issues, then you've got to drill down on it and you've got to look at symptoms of just some of the, I don't know, if you send me blood work and you come back with, okay, I'll use thyroid, for example, T3 looks okay, T4 looks okay, but you've got symptoms of like hyperthyroidism, well, that's not telling you it. So something's telling me you've got the circulating hormone, but it's not finding its way to its destination. So what's going on there? Why are we getting issues? Is it reverse T3? Do you have some antibodies present? Or is it an issue that's caused by a food change or something inflammatory which is causing an issue? I don't really see this being talked about. It's just kind of, okay, we'll look at some numbers and we'll prescribe from there. You know, so I like to try and like take a holistic view of everything when it comes to supplementation, diet and training and try and get them all in sync together. But yeah, with product, I would just really start, if anyone's got any digestive problems, I would start with Matador with Ravenous, because generally I'm probably talking to a population of people who eat more frequently than 2 or 3 times a day. And we're not really designed for that. And over time of eating 5, 6 meals a day or constantly snacking, our stomach acid becomes weaker, becomes compromised. And as we get older, we produce less enzymes anyway. So it's commonly accepted that for like males, as we get older, our testosterone drops. But why is it not commonly acknowledged that we produce less enzymes and our gut becomes weaker and becomes compromised? The amount of times that we eat and the amounts that we eat and the quality of food that we could be potentially eating, it goes back to that thing about hormetic stress. You know, supermarkets or like these food companies, that test products and say it's not detrimental. You might be testing in, okay, they're going to eat 2 slices of this bread or 2 ounces of this processed food, and it's not detrimental. But the general population ain't going to eat 2 ounces once a day. They're probably going to eat like 10 ounces multiple times a day, and that's where the problems occur. Compound day on day, week over week, month over month. Yeah. You know, so as you can tell, I'm very non-committal with a lot of things because I like a full picture before I answer anything. You know. But
that's what makes it great. And you know what I like is, and this is one of the cool things about whether you're a strongman, a bodybuilder, any athlete, is you get to be your own guinea pig. You get to test on yourself. You know, you become your own experiment. One of the things I've been doing is taking the digestive products and then putting right on the skin, near infrared light on the vagus nerve and the things running right below the stomach, right below the belly button. It has made an incredible difference. Now, again, it's all experiment at this point. You know, you know, I won't know till the results for, you know, you got to at least do this for a couple months. But it is amazing the difference in digestion at how much that carries over into every other area of your body. You know, when the digestion's good, it seems like you're getting better absorption of supplements, everything else, the food's better absorbed. I just love that you guys have addressed this issue. And even if you're non-committal about it, you're addressing
I
it.
mean, even then, like I put my like non-supplement company, I put that to one side when I'm talking to someone. So if you're telling me this and you say, "Hey Joe, I'm using these digestive products and things about," I'm like, well, my first question is, well, why are we having problems anyway? Send me your diet. Let's look at what food choices you're making. And let's look at the composition of the meal. Maybe you're having too much fat mixed with the fiber and it's slowing down the digestive rate too much. Or maybe you've got an inflammatory response to the carbohydrate source you use. Or maybe you just don't do well with the protein source. Or I don't know, some people don't tolerate some vegetables too well. So that's where I always like to start. I think that's why the company has so much trust, because it's never about selling a product. It's about, let's look at what you're doing and let's try and fix any issues you've got, so you're working from a solid base, because that covers me then. Because if you then trust me and invest in the supplement and you don't get results because I haven't fixed the base level, then you're going to be unhappy. So, well, this product doesn't work. Well, no, it can't correct something that you're doing 5-6 times that's causing like an issue that's greater than any supplement can solve. And then you have trust in me, you have trust in the company, and then we have a customer for life.
Yeah. Well, this has been great stuff. I appreciate your time. I got one last two-parter for you. What is next for Joe Binley? Because you're always into something new, exciting, And where can people learn more about you and Project A.D?
Okay, so my priority for the next 6 to 12 months is to really build out Professor Nutz and get that into grocery stores. We're in talks with a lot of grocery stores currently, but we've been hit with delays because of the coronavirus, obviously, because people are not in their offices, they're not working, so their acceptance of new products has been put back. But building out that brand, it's going to end up probably by the end of next year having about 18 to 20 different SKUs under that brand name. So that's been aggressively built out. We're just about to acquire a new piece of machinery which will allow us to make a whole new range of products under that branding. And I'm sat on another range of supplements. I've been sat on for 12 months, so maybe I'll do that sometime. But honestly, the next 5 years is going to be building out these brands. I've got 3 years product development already done. I've got another food product which I'll be launching probably in 2021, 2022. And I'm doing a lot of research at the moment into peptides. That's really interested me. I've used peptides on and off since 2011. Obviously started with the bodybuilding type with the CJCs, the GHRPs, HGH Frag, and a bunch of others. And there's just a lot more of them now. So I've actually played with copper peptide recently, LL37. I'm very interested because I've had issues with my immune system and autoimmune, which we haven't discussed. This might be one for a future podcast. But there's a lot of peptides which can help with the immune system and immune function. And obviously BPC, which I'm sure you're familiar with, for helping with injuries and regulate inflammation. So that's something that I'm getting really deep into. I'd say next year I'll make it a priority, but it's not just, again, like I said before, it's not just about learning about that. It's how does that tie in with an individual? So it's about looking at epigenetics and how can peptides and epigenetics be married together to create better performance and health outcomes without going through conventional means. Because I don't believe that conventional medicines, well, I don't want to talk too badly about it, but I just don't really rate it.
I'm with you.
My mum was a victim of the healthcare system. She was misdiagnosed with cancer, and I've just seen too many people have poor experiences with it. And it's about pushing. Everyone's a number, and it's about pushing drugs. It's not about curing the root cause of the problem. And I do believe strongly that the right choices of peptides, working with people's genes and getting the right gene expressions, along with microbiome manipulation, is probably where, I don't know, it's probably where the golden ticket is regarding health and prevention of disease states, with those three all married together. But I think we're going to be 5 to 10 years away from getting close to that. But that's where my head's at now. And that's something that I've already got in my mind. I'd like to open some clinics and some things like that in the next 10 years that work towards that.
Yeah, I tell you what, that's right on the edge. I mean, when I was a speaker at the Biohackers Conference, that the stuff that you're talking about, that's the future. So I am not surprised at all that you're all over it before anybody else. That's amazing. And where can people go to find out more about Joe Binley?
They can always get hold of me on Instagram. You know, I'm actually, you know what, I was so anti-Instagram when it started, and then I became like an addict. I need to but yeah, they can get me anytime there, or if they've got any questions, I'm easily accessible there. Probably there more so than Facebook, because I don't know, this Facebook always like gets sent into another inbox. Or they can check out our products on our websites, which I'm sure you'll have a link to at the bottom of the podcast. But yeah, there's a lot of things coming. Trust me, we don't stop here. We're always a couple of years ahead when it comes to planning.
Man, I want to thank you. I hope we can have you on again. I want to thank our guest, Joe Binley, for investing in all of our listeners today. Project A.D., one of the most cutting-edge stuff you will ever use. I personally use it. It's fantastic stuff. Thanks so much for being on the show.
No, I appreciate you inviting me on. I appreciate your time, John, and also your support as a friend, and also with the training and the business. As I say, I only allow certain people close to me, and I count myself very fortunate that you're one of them.
Oh, man, that means so much. Thank you very much.